Hey guys, what up? Publik here, back with another dungeon video on the BFA beta. This time we are checking out Dagor. And if you haven't watched some of these other videos, this is going to be other perspective from a Shadow Priest. And I'll kind of go over all the trash and the bosses, kind of what they do, how they function, that kind of thing. So for this dungeon, guys, I did this on normal difficulty. And you'll kind of see some of the things are a little bit toned down, and they probably will be on Heroic and Mythic. I've only done this dungeon once. I have not gotten it to pop my queues very often. So far, it's kind of an interesting dungeon. It feels a little cramped, I'll say that, but the concept is kind of interesting. You basically start outside, and then you're raiding this kind of not castle, but fortress, I guess I would say. So you kind of go through the sewers and kill a bunch of these little mobs here. There's one boss outside. The trash around it is pretty easy. There's basically like 2 trash pulls, and then you get to the first boss. Pretty straightforward stuff. And this boss is basically guarding the sewer entrance, so nothing too crazy here. The boss is called the Sand Queen. So for the most part, there's not too much here. She has like dirt piles on the ground that do damage when you walk over them, and then she also burrows underground and then comes back up on a specific player. But again, not that bad here. There's also sandstorms that happen throughout the fight. I really don't know what these sandstorms were doing. They were just kind of annoying. I guess I was just taking damage from it, but there wasn't like an ability I had to dodge or anything like that. So pretty easy. And then eventually she'll enrage as well. But that's the first boss here. It's pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy. It's just the first boss guarding the instance, basically. So after you kill her, you're basically storming through the sewers. And then once you kill enough Crocolists, you basically end up in the basement of the fortress. And here's where you start working your way up. You're killing a lot of the Kulturan humans, I think, and just in general like pirate themed guys and everything. So you're kind of going through the prisons and kind of winding your way up eventually to the top of the fortress where the final boss is. So like I said, it's a little cramped here. I'll say pathing here is pretty defined. There's not a whole lot of freedom to move where you want to go. Everything is pretty linear here. It's just a matter of how much can you pull together. That's really the thing with this dungeon. So not too exciting, but that's basically that. The trash itself isn't that bad. I don't know. They did some AoE attacks, and there was a lot of range casters you wanted to interrupt. And this is one of the instances where the mobs do cast shields on themselves. So if you fail to interrupt the shield cast as a Shadow Priest or any person that can dispel or cleanse off enemies, very useful here. Their shields are like 20-30% of their health when they get it off, so you want to make sure to dispel that off if it ever happens. So definitely kind of nice being a Shadow Priest. I guess Mass Dispel does have a use after all, so there's that. Again, this is another one with a lot of trash between each boss. Eventually you hit kind of, I guess what I would call one of a jailer boss. So he's not that bad. He's just a Worgen that does kind of a AoE attack every now and then. And eventually what he does, which is kind of cool, he runs throughout the entire jail and unlocks all the prisoners who then come and attack you. Kind of interesting. So then you basically kill all the prisoners and then get to him a second time and then kill him again. So this boss is kind of mixed in with some trash here. Kind of fun. I really enjoyed that part about it. Wasn't expecting it at all there. And then eventually, like I said, you just keep working your way up to the top of the fortress. Mob packs don't really change. There's kind of like, you're basically in like their quarters area now, so there's a little bit less mobs, but they're definitely beefier and bigger and harder to kill. They do some chain casts and a lot of silences for sure, so you kind of want to get if you have any like even AoE fears or stuns or anything here, great for these mobs. You definitely want to line of sight them, otherwise they'll just AoE shoot or range shoot at people, kind of like the mobs in Halls of Valor that just shoot at people. There's a lot of those here. But eventually you make your way to Knight Captain Valerie. I'm not sure how you say it. You get to her by basically going through the outskirts of the dungeon, killing some trash there, which is kind of interesting. There's cannons at each edge of the dungeon, and these cannons can be used to hit the mobs. It does quite a lot of damage, so I always, whenever I use this, end up taking threat off the tank. I'm not quite sure if this is like a strat you can use, but you should be able just to basically pull the entire thing and just use the cannons to light them all up. So this will be kind of a fun pull to do Mythic Plus, I think. So they also knocks the mobs around, so it can make the mobs harder to kill for the rest of your group, but I thought it was fun to do anyway, so I used it. So, and then you eventually get to the boss, who actually does quite a lot of damage, I'd say. So one of the mechanics is she has flaming barrels that gets popped out, and you basically need to move the barrels out of the flame circles so that they don't explode and deal damage to the whole group. So that's the kind of the first mechanic part of this is moving the barrels. Definitely when you have the barrel you can't attack, so it's kind of a pain in the butt. So you'd prefer a healer to do it if they can, but obviously in this difficulty it's hard. And then she also has a big AoE attack that will basically, you have to move the barrels even further than you did the first time. So barrel positioning here is kind of annoying, but that's kind of the whole point of this boss. So went down pretty easily, but definitely something to keep in mind with how you're handling the barrels and managing that stuff. After you kill her, it's just onwards and upwards back to the final leg of the instance. Eventually, you'll reach the very top where you get to the final boss. There's not a whole lot of trash in between these two bosses. A few pulls, nothing too crazy. And then you get to the final boss here, which is Overseer Korgus. Again, more pirate-themed stuff here. This guy is actually, I don't know, the room is a little awkward. There's a pit in the middle that's fenced off. So you're basically playing on the corners of the top of the fortress. So you feel a little cramped here. I don't know. It's okay. He does AoE effect on every player, so you kind of want to stay spread out. And then he also will target a specific player with, it's called the Deadeye Bullet. So this is very similar to the second to last boss in Blackrock Hold. I think it's Smash Bite. I can't remember. I think it's something like that. And basically, once you soak it, you get a 2-minute debuff that increases your damage taken from it. So you really can't soak it more than once as a regular DPS or healer without an immunity. So you're kind of relying on tanks or other immunity classes to take this for you. Because if you get targeted with it twice, you're basically dead. And it does knock you back as well. I don't know if you can get actually knocked off the platform. But like I said, you're kind of close quarters, so you don't have a whole lot of room to maneuver this boss. But eventually that's really it. So you have to manage the soaks and then worry about being spread out. And that's really it for this boss. So overall, I think the dungeon's kind of interesting. It's a little, like I said, a little close quarters, but otherwise kind of fun. I don't know, one of my favorites, I guess, so far. So kind of looking forward to what this will look like, what the heroic and mythic mechanics will bring to it. But guys, that's really it for this video. If you have any questions about it, put them in the comments below. As well, if you have any suggestions or more content you'd like to see from Shadow Priest or whatever else, let me know in the comments below. All right, guys, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.